States so that we can come here and learn about you, share the gospel. Please be with us. Please open our minds. Please help us to absorb everything you have for us today in Sunday school and church. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I'm sorry. I'm recording and it's picking up everything.
All righty.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Shh.
Balaam and his donkey. Strange story. Now, you'd think that a talking donkey would be the main focus of these next 3 chapters, but the main focus of these 3 chapters is God keeping His covenant. The Israelites didn't even know this was going on, that they had a chance to lose everything, they might be cursed. They were just down in the valley, they had no idea what was happening. What happened is, the Israelites were in this position because God kept His promise. In Genesis 22:17, God promised that He would make the Israelites this large nation, that He would bless them. Just like what happened in Egypt when the Pharaoh and the Egyptian people saw all the Israelites lined up, and they got afraid of the large group, they pressed them into slavery. Same thing happened with the people of Moab. In verse 3, we see when the people of Moab saw how many Israelites there were terrified. Just imagine the millions of people that were out there, all the Israelites, coming, just lining the country. Because whenever a large group of people would have massacred your borders, they were there to take you over. So that's what the Moabites were afraid of. They thought that the Israelites would come in, take over the country, and wipe them out. So Balak, king of Moab, sent messengers to call on Balaam, son of Beor. Now, in my going through the commentaries, you think of some people in the Bible, you think, well, this person was just maybe a figure that was known to a couple people. But Balaam, he was a popular sorcerer at the time. And in our supplement, the book of Balaam, you get a little bit of history of Balaam and how popular he was. There were writings about him on the outside of a building. So this guy was really popular. So the King Balak was calling on the right guy. He figured, I'm going to call on the sorcerer. He's going to take care of these Israelites for me. Then perhaps I will be able to conquer them and drive them from the land. If Balaam curses these Israelites, then I can take care of them. Balak's messengers, who were the elders of Moabite and Midian, they set out with money to pay Balaam to place a curse on the Israelites. What they didn't know is that God's already started to work on Balaam. Now, I was talking to Gary beforehand, and we can't let these 3 chapters influence us too much on Balaam, because he wasn't a good guy. He was out for profit, but as for any person that God chooses to use, God chose him to use at this time. So don't get confused. Balaam's not a good guy. But God's working on him, and Balaam tells Balak, in the morning I will tell you whatever the Lord directs me to say. Now the important thing about this phrase here, the Lord, that means that God had an impact on him. Balaam didn't know who the Israelites were. He didn't know who Yahweh was. All he knows is this being, this supreme being was talking to me. And he actually addresses him as the Lord. He actually used Yahweh. If we look at the Hebrew scriptures, he does say Yahweh, which is a word that only the Israelites knew, and actually at this time only Moses knew. So we know that God is really, really trying to get his message through this guy. Go ahead.
Was Balaam a sorcerer, why they called him?
Yep. He was like the top dog in the whole area. He was the sorcerer.
And he was many miles away.
Yep. His popularity preceded him.
Yeah, wasn't he the one who did the Moabites sacrifice children?
Right.
So Balaam would have been in charge of that.
I don't know if he was in charge of it.
Yeah.
But that was part of their practice.
Yeah.
Now, if when we look at verse 9, that night God came to Balaam. Now, when we see that phrase, we're not to think that God appeared face to face to Balaam. This is the phrase that's used whenever God would come to the prophets in dreams. So, God did not have a relationship with Balaam like he had with Moses, where he actually faced Moses face to face and spoke to him.
So there were two countries or tribes, whatever, came together to get Balaam to do it. Moab and Midian.
Because they were all afraid of the Israelites. They were so huge.
Wasn't Moses' first father-in-law a Midianite?
His wife.
The Midianite priest. But as we remember back to when we studied about the Midianites and Moses' father-in-law, they didn't have the same beliefs as the Jewish people. They didn't know Yahweh either.
Well, and again, the thing to find interesting is the Moabs came from Lot's oldest daughter,
Yeah.
is where they came from that incestuous relationship.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the Midianites, they came from Abraham's second wife, Keturah.
Oh,
So the family tree came down to haunt him.
Well, but you're
Yeah.
starting to, if you do the research to look this up, you will find that a lot of these countries in the roundabout, you'll find why they despised the Jews is because, again, they despised Jacob.
Yep.
They despised Joseph. And that's where it goes back to.
They're holding on to some grudges.
Yeah.
Let it go.
Verse 12. But God told Balaam, don't go with them. You are not to curse these people, for they have been blessed. So God's telling Balaam, here's your marching orders. You can do whatever you want to, but you're just not going to curse these people. The next morning, Balaam got up and told Balak's officials, go home, the Lord will not let me go with you.
Why didn't he just stay where he was at and curse him instead of traveling?
Well, as we'll see later on, in curses, you have to actually visualize the people. You actually have to see them in order, that's what they thought, that you actually had to see them to place the curse on them. So, we'll see when he positions Balaam the first time, that kind of gives you an idea of why he had to be there. But, let's see, so, then Balak says to Balaam, please don't let anything stop you from coming to help me. I will pay you very well and do whatever you tell me. Just come and curse these people for me. So Balaam knows he's got a big paycheck if he goes out there and sees and curses the people. Verse 18, but Balaam responded to Balak's messengers, even if Balak were to give me his palace filled with silver and gold, I would be powerless to do anything against the will of the Lord my God. Balaam calls Yahweh my God, but Balaam's not a true believer, as we're going to see later on in Numbers 31. In Numbers 31:16, we hear, they were the ones who followed Balaam's advice and enticed the Israelites to be unfaithful to the Lord in the Peor incident, so that a plague struck the Lord's people. So we see later on, Balaam goes back to his old ways. So we just have to hold on.
Sounded like he was a good negotiator.
Yeah.
Yeah, used car salesman.
And in 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 15, they have left the straight way and wandered off to follow the way of Balaam, son of Bezer, who loved the wages of wickedness. Balaam would do anything for money. In Jude 11, woe to them, they have taken the way of Cain, they have rushed for profit into Balaam's error. They have been destroyed in Korah's rebellion. But Balaam, he knows that God is the one true God. He knows that Yahweh is the one true God. But this is a temporary situation. Verse 20, that night God came to Balaam and told him, since these men have come for you, get up and go with them, but do only what I tell you what to do. So God's allowing him to go, but he's gonna give him instructions, specific things to say, as we'll see. Balaam and his donkey. So now we hear about the poor donkey. Verse 22, so Balaam's on his way, and verse 22 is kind of confusing, because here in verse 20, we see that God talks to Balaam and says, okay, it's okay for you to go. But in verse 22, God's angry, and he puts his angel in the way of Balaam. Now, we don't know what Balaam did, but maybe his intentions were still false. So God knew something was going on, because God knows everything.
You know, when I read this, I
Balaam
thought of
didn't
that
show.
that talking donkey. Remember Francis the Mule? Or
Oh, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
It's just-
And then of course you had Mr. Ed, but that was a horse.
Right.
So, but
A horse, of course.
Of course.
of course, it was a horse.
Francis was, that was a long time ago.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I-
But that's where I wonder if they got the talking donkey from.
Well, they had talking animals back in the ancient world.
They did.
Yeah, well, in stories, it came up.
Okay,
Now, in the Bible, of course, the only other animal that ever spoke was the serpent in Eden.
right.
Okay. But they had this belief in the ancient world that animals could speak to them. And you see, it's kind of strange that we would think if an animal's talking to us, we'd say, what's going on here? But Balaam is just like, oh, it's natural.
I mean, we think our animals talk to us at home, our cats, but they really don't. But
Well,
they do.
yeah, she chatters a lot.
Right, but she doesn't actually speak a word like Jim. You
No.
know, she did,
No,
right.
My squirrels talk to me.
Oh,
They
yeah.
say, "Squirm, squirm."
Mine just look at me like,
Yeah,
come on,
bring it on.
where's the food?
Oh, that's our blue jays.
Yeah.
That's what they do
No, it's just weird, talking animals. I'm sorry, it just.
now.
Yeah. So we don't know exactly what Balaam did. We just know that his intentions weren't good.
Okay.
Maybe he was just like Moses, when God gave Moses specific instructions. Speak to the rock and you'll get the water. And then Moses said, oh yeah, I'll do that. And then he hits the rock twice and then takes credit for it. So maybe Balaam's intentions weren't clear. So we don't know exactly what happened, but God sent his messenger to stand in front of Balaam. Well, actually his donkey.
Well, no, the donkey saw the angel in the road.
Yeah.
Right.
But then we see in verse 28, the Lord gave the donkey the ability to speak. Okay.
So it took 3 times before Balaam's eye was open.
He should have bucked him off.
Walked into the woods,
kind of.
pressed his foot,
Yeah.
just laid down.
And Balaam didn't know what was going on until verse 31. Then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes. So God allowed this action to go on 3 times, the magical number 3. And Balaam's ready to kill the donkey. If he had a sword, he would have killed him. But then the Lord lets Balaam realize, look, I'm doing this for a reason. So let's pop back to verse 30. The donkey says to Balaam, I'm the same donkey you've ridden all your life. Have I ever done anything like this to you before? So God's allowing the donkey to speak and say, what's different about this picture? Have I ever done this to you before? And Balaam goes, no. Then why would I do it now? And finally, Balaam's getting an idea. Well, you wouldn't. So then God opens his eyes.
Yeah, first and foremost, how do you have a conversation with a donkey? I think that's weird.
Well, and
Just like Francis the talking mule. I'm just
How would you
saying.
Not,
that's the strange thing.
yeah.
And
Don't
At
you
first, when
think,
you just
though,
talk back
that-
to him and say,
Don't you think that maybe the donkey really wasn't actually speaking? But Balaam could sense what the donkey was saying. If Balaam was thinking,
well, we
you've
would
never let me down.
think that, except the Bible tells us the Lord gave the donkey
Yeah, I
the
know.
ability to speak.
then the
And let's-
Lord opened the mouth of the donkey.
Yeah, and let's backtrack a little bit. Back in the ancient world, the ancient people were so suspicious, they gave these powers to things, to animals, to the sun, to everything, and they just accepted it.
I'm kind of a doubting Thomas, I'm sorry.
No, I,
Absolutely, absolutely.
Maybe he's doing that
We would
today,
think it
though.
was weird.
Yeah.
You know, if our dog said, I am tired of this puppy chow, give me something else. We wouldn't just say, okay. We'd look up to God and say, well, what are you doing to me?
No, my dog would have just refused to eat it, and I would have said, oh, you don't like that anymore, do you? I'll get you some more different kind.
My cat will bury,
Yeah.
Autumn will bury things.
Yes.
I don't want to.
Hey,
That's their
I
way
had
of
a dog
talking.
and a cat. I know how they act.
Yeah.
Balaam was a sorcerer, and sorcerers had a habit of collecting hallucinogenic things around them and using those hallucinogenic things
maybe he was
to
smoking
their
something,
advantage. And he
Yeah.
thought
smoking on the
maybe-
road.
So maybe he talked to his donkey a lot, and when it actually answered, he just,
Well,
So-
if you have a pet, don't you talk to it?
Yeah, you do.
Pets don't talk
Oh,
to it.
yeah.
Just don't talk
I mean, you
back.
do.
Yeah, but you
Yes.
know it, understand it to a certain extent.
Sometimes.
I might not respond that way.
It just seems so weird, you know, in the Bible to have this little fantasy in the middle of Numbers. To me, it's a
It
fantasy.
seems very strange.
Yes, exactly,
And I
so,
thought it was strange.
But as Red just told us, Balaam was one of the ancestors of Timothy Leary, and he probably had some hallucinations.
hallucinogen drugs that were around there.
and like I tell the kids at Awana, the Bible is the truth. So if it's in there,
And there's probably another message in here that hasn't been yet revealed to us,
right.
so.
And when we get to heaven, all our animals will talk. So what's the difference, right?
And we pray to God that they'll be there.
Yes,
Pray to
yes.
God.
Dogs go to heaven at least, I know.
That's what the movie said.
All dogs go to heaven.
That's what
Yes.
the movie said. So then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes. He saw the angel of the Lord standing on the roadway. So Balaam couldn't see the angel until he finally agreed, until he finally owned up to abusing his animal.
I was wondering what kind of sword, it was like the Roman two-edged short one.
Yeah.
Or like the one that they stood at the gates of, at Eden. You know, it was a funky sword. It was more light,
Don't know.
Yeah, I think it was more like a lightsaber.
Yeah.
lightsaber.
Fire.
Yeah, pointed and fired.
Either way, it was going to cut through him probably pretty clean.
Yeah, pretty clean.
Yeah. Like a two-edged sword that cuts between bone and marrow. Could be, don't know. Verse 34, then Balaam confessed to the angel of the Lord, I have sinned. I didn't realize you were standing in the road to block my way. I'll return home if you're against my going. Verse 35, but the angel of the Lord told Balaam, go with these men, but say only what I tell you to say, and nothing more. Because God could have just said to Balaam, okay, stop, you're not going. But then the message wouldn't get across to Balaam of how powerful God is and what the true intent of the meeting is.
Sometimes
Which
I
again
was
tells
taught-
us who the angel of the Lord was.
Yeah.
Because it says, tell him only what I tell you to say.
Sometimes I wish the angel of the Lord would block my path
Yeah.
for more decisions.
I wish the angel of the Lord would stuff a sock in my mouth.
Right.
We have choices. God gives us choices.
Sometimes we just have to wait that extra second for the speech to come back.
Walk around in a circle.
Sometimes God is sending us messages and we don't listen, or sometimes He wants us to go through that and say, you gotta listen to learn. So here, maybe that's the time He says, no, I don't want you to do this, but you have to learn a lesson.
Not today.
Not today.
Sometimes the angels use other people too. If you have an extra sock, one of us can help you.
Yeah,
I've only been wearing this one since 5 o'clock.
yeah, no thank you. No thank you.
But there were some in the front seat from your run yesterday on the front.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, no, definitely not that.
I didn't take them in the
I was
house.
like, what are those? You have socks rolled up.
Well, those are the ones I put on my hands.
I know, but you're taking them in the house. They're still there. I haven't touched them.
They still do get pretty sweaty. Anyway,
We're down to one car, so it's really fun in our house.
I digress.
The
Right.
angel of the Lord.
And the angel of the Lord sometimes is an angel, sometimes it's the Lord, and sometimes it varies in the same instance. It could have been the messenger stopping the donkey, but here in verse 35, where it says, "But say only what I tell you to say," once again, it could still be the angel getting the message directly from God, or it could be God.
I thought it was kind of insightful in 34, he says, "I have sinned." How
Yeah.
did he know he had sinned?
Yeah, because he wasn't a follower, was he? He wasn't.
Right, but we see in his earlier phrases, he starts calling God Yahweh. So God, through one way or another, has let him know who he is.
Or maybe he's just very observant as a sorcerer. He just notices all kinds of things so that he can use it against them.
Could be.
Or
Could be.
I don't know.
It could be like some people right now. They know that God exists, but they don't want to believe in him. They like their lifestyle so much now that they don't want to give up their freedoms as they see it.
At this point in the Bible, there weren't many copies of the old Ten Commandments floating around.
No,
Just one,
no,
2 tablets.
Yeah, you couldn't check it out at the library.
and they're locked away pretty safely.
No, not too many people read it.
No, no. It was an oral tradition. Let's see, where are we at here?
Just a weird chapter, that's all.
It is, it's strange.
The donkey, talking donkey.
But we get real. We're done with the donkey now.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so Balaam replied, "Look," so he's finally arrived. "Now I have come, but I have no power to say whatever I want. I will speak only the message that God puts in my mouth." Then Balaam accompanied Balak to Kirith Huzoth, where the king sacrificed cattle and sheep. He sent portions of the meat to Balaam and the officials who were with him. The next morning, Balak took Balaam up to Bamoth Baal. Okay,
Whoops.
so,
The bee chapter.
huh? The bee,
Yeah, the bee chapter. It's all bees.
So, some commentaries made Bamoth Baal sound like a city, but actually what it was is, Bamoth Baal is the Hebrew word for high places of Baal, which were the high places for the Moabite sacrifices. So, and
Basically a mountaintop.
a mountaintop.
And they're still on the east side of the Jordan?
Yes, they haven't crossed over yet. I had to visualize where we're at. From there, he could see some of the people of Israel spread out below him. Now, English versions of the Bible